What's a deck that you guys love to hate? Hey everybody, this is the Mage of Ancients, and I'm very excited to show you guys my first ever PSY-Frame deck profile. This is a deck that I did not expect to build, but since I opened up that High Speed Riders booster box, I just felt like, you know what, I really should build PSY-Frames. Just to show everybody what these things can do. Probably not surprising to everybody, but if you ask me, guys, PSY-Frames are never meant to win right away. They're actually meant to prevent your opponent from winning, which is why you see all these hand traps, and that's why you have seen so much hype around Gamma over the past couple of months or several months. Anyway, this is a deck that is meant to go against the meta. It's anti-meta. It's never meant to do anything crazy. It's just meant to just prevent your opponent from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I can pretty much see why a lot of people hate PSY-Frames, but I just have to show you guys what you can do with these things. If you are looking for a way to just go against pretty much any other archetype, then PSY-Frames is definitely the archetype for you. So, as I go through this deck profile, I will definitely show you guys every single card that I run in this deck. And I'm hoping to go to my locals sometime soon, so that way I can try it out, or look for some friends around my area so that I can play this deck against, and probably get some hate after playing this deck for several times. Of course, with the new ban list around, you may have heard that Ancient Fairy Dragon is actually banned now, and I think that's a pretty decent pick to ban on the ban list, and because Ancient Fairy Dragon is just a way too easy way to get to reach your field spells. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get Ancient Fairy Dragon in this deck profile update. However, it's a good thing I didn't, because I would have shelled like I guess $2 or $3 extra bucks just to get a copy of Ancient Fairy Dragon, and to later realize that it was actually banned. You're not going to see Ancient Fairy Dragon in this build, but don't worry, there are plenty of other synchro monsters to choose from. And if you guys have any suggestions on what I should do to improve this deck, then be sure to let me know down in the comments below. I've actually been thinking about what I could do to improve PSY-Frame decks, so I figured that maybe I can make a variant of the PSY-Frame deck that includes spirit monsters. So if you guys want to see that PSY-Frame deck variant that includes spirit monsters, then be sure to let me know down in the comments below. And I'll be sure to get that variant and deck profile recorded right away. With all that being said and done, let's get started with this deck profile. So to start off with my main deck, I run 3 copies of PSY-Framegear Gamma, which, by the way, I love this. This is the reprint from Extreme Force Special Edition, and this is the ultra rare print that I got from my High Speed Riders unboxing. If you guys haven't seen those pack openings, then be sure to check those out. Anyway, PSY-Framegear Gamma is the hand trap that you want to see in your hand the most often. So in case you guys don't know what the frame gears do, these act as hand traps that you can special summon to respond to pretty much anything that your opponents do. So in this case, PSY-Framegear Gamma, you can special summon it when your opponent tries to activate a monster effect, and if your opponent does, then you can negate it and destroy it. And at that same time, you can special summon Gamma along with a driver from your hand, deck, or graveyard. And in such case, when you have both a frame gear as well as a driver on your field, then you can synchro summon to any of your synchro monsters. And I'll get to those synchro monsters in just a bit. This is the hand trap that you want to see in your hand the most, and that's the reason why I decided to run 3 copies. I mean, I don't see any other reason why you shouldn't run 3 copies. Another 3 of that I run is PSY-Framegear Delta. While monster effects are flying around, spell cards and activations are running around as well. So you want to max out on Delta as well. It does the same thing as Gamma, except in this case, Delta negates spell cards. It doesn't negate spell effects, just so you guys know. Next, I run 1 copy of Beta. I would have bumped this up to 2, but I couldn't get another Beta in time for this deck profile. So next time I update this deck, then I will definitely include at least 1 other Beta. So Beta acts as pretty much a battle fader for PSY-Frames. So Beta lets you special summon itself along with a driver so that you can destroy an opponent's attacking monster. I think. Yeah, it destroys the attacking monster and then it ends the battle phase. So yeah, it's just like Battle Fader for PSY-Frames. At this point, you could include any other PSY-Frame gears that you want in this build. It's totally up to you. In the meantime, these are the other PSY-Frame gears that I run in this build. So in this case, I run 2 copies of PSY-Framegear Alpha. This lets you respond to your opponent's summons, sorry. So it special summons itself along with the driver, and then you can synchro summon into PSY-Framelord Zeta, which lets you bounce any of your opponent's monsters back to his or her hand. So after that, I run one PSY-Framegear Epsilon. You don't see generic traps being used as often in the meta right now, although you have to take into account that evenly matched is still at 3, and infinite impermanence, sorry, I was trying to pronounce it, infinite impermanence is just released off of Flames of Destruction, so maybe you want to bump this copy of Epsilon up to 2 instead of 1. So those are the PSY-Frame gears. Now for the rest of the PSY-Frames that I run in my main deck, I run 2 copies of Multithreader, and by the way, PSY-Frame Multithreader acts as PSY-Frame driver either in your hand or in the graveyard. But of course, you also have to run the original PSY-Frame driver. I run 2 copies of that. So it's like you're playing 4 PSY-Frame drivers in this build, which is pretty cool. And you can also dump a Multithreader from your deck into your graveyard by using Foolish Burial. The last 2 monsters that I run in my main deck is Card D. You don't summon as much on your turn. You're just special summoning these frame gears just to respond to pretty much anything that your opponent does. You can normal summon your Card D, and then you can just draw 2 cards and then just end your turn so that you can wait for pretty much anything that your opponent tries to do. So those are the monsters that I run in my main deck. I'm actually thinking of doing a different deck profile where I incorporate spirit monsters into PSY-Frames. So if you guys want to check that out, then be sure to leave your comment down below saying that you want to see a PSY-Frame deck profile that includes spirit monsters. So yeah, those are the monsters that I run in my main deck. Sorry for the mess. I'm trying to use and adjust to the new tripod. Anyway, those are the monsters that I run. Now let's go over to my spells. Now for my spells, of course, I run 3 copies of PSY-Frame Circuit. I mean, not of course, but if you ask me, I don't see any reason as to why you should not run 3 copies of PSY-Frame Circuit. It doesn't do anything when you activate it, unlike Dynamis Charge or Trickstar Light Stage, where you can search another card from your deck. But PSY-Frame Circuit is the way in which you can just churn out more and more synchro monsters. What it does is that when you special summon a PSY-Framegear from your hand, then you can just synchro summon both your PSY-Framegear along with your driver into pretty much any synchro monster in your extra deck. So yeah. This is especially for the PSY-Framelord, since you just use their quick effects to banish themselves from the field and banish pretty much any other card that your opponent has on your field or in their hand, depending on the situation. And of course, to search it out, you gotta have Terraforming. In this case, I run 2 copies of that. Surprisingly, this is not banned, but probably Terraforming isn't the problem here. Whatever the case is, be sure to enjoy this card while you can, because you never know when this card could get limited or banned or anything like that. Next, I run 3 copies of Psychic Field Zone. In case you guys don't know what this does, I'm going to read this to you right now. Select 2 of your removed from play monsters, that means banished, by the way. Your removed from play monsters, 1 Psychic type tuner and 1 Psychic type non-tuner. Return them to the graveyard and special summon 1 Psychic type synchro monster from your extra deck in face-up defense position, whose level equals the total levels of the returned monsters. So this is kind of like synchro summoning, but it's not synchro summoning. You're basically just returning either a PSY-Framegear or your driver back to your graveyard, and then you can special summon a synchro monster that corresponds to the total levels. There are going to be those cases where you don't have your PSY-Frame Circuit out on your field in order to synchro summon right away. So when you have Psychic Field Zone, then you can special summon your PSY-Frame driver along with your Framegear, and then return them to your graveyard, and so that way you can get out your PSY-Framelords and your other synchro monsters as well. Which, by the way, I forgot to mention, the PSY-Framegear's effects where they special summon themselves from your hand, they get banished at the end phase of the turn in which they were special summoned. This is the card to just bring back those Framegears and your PSY-Frames back into your pretty much possession. So after that, I run 3 copies of Pot of Duality. Again, just like just like card D, you don't special summon on your turn as much as you think. So this is pretty much the way to just search the top of your deck for the cards that you need. So you excavate the top 3 cards of your deck, and then you can add one, then shuffle the rest back into your deck. So you can what you can do is that you can activate Pot of Duality, and then afterwards you can normal summon your card D, draw 2 cards, and you pretty much have 3 cards ready to respond to pretty much anything that your opponent does. So these are the cards that pretty much any PSY-Frame deck runs. But if you ask me, I feel that you could do so much more. So here we go. For the rest of the spells, this is probably the spiciest tech-in that you can include in this PSY-Frame deck. 3 copies of Foolish Burial Goods, and you'll see why in a minute. In the meantime, the one-ofs that I run are the regular Foolish Burial. This is to get your PSY-Frame multi-threader into your graveyard, just like I said in the beginning of this video. For the rest of the one-ofs, I run 1 Monster Reborn, 1 Raigeki, and 1 Soul Charge. You don't go into your battle phase if you activate Soul Charge. That's the only downside to this. However, you can activate Soul Charge, and let's say that you have 2 PSY-Framegears in your graveyard as well as 2 drivers, that you can special summon those 4 monsters, or a 5th one if you are very lucky. Then what you can do is that you can synchro summon a level 2 Framegear along with your driver to go into Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend. And you can destroy all other special summoned effect monsters, so you can deal 500 points of damage to your opponent for each monster that was destroyed this way. So yeah, Raigeki is also Raigeki because it destroys monsters that your opponent controls. Monster Reborn, really good card. It brings back a monster from either your opponent's graveyard or your own. And yeah, I'm going to explain Foolish Burial Goods right now because I'm going to go right into the traps. Bear with me. Oh, by the way, guys, I forgot. PSY-Frame Circuit also has an Honest-like effect, and I'm going to read it to you right now. It says at the start of the damage step, if a PSY-Frame monster you control battles an opponent's monster, you can discard 1 PSY-Frame monster. The monster you're battling with gains attack equal to that discarded monster's attack until the end of the turn. I'm not planning on using that second effect as often, but it's something that I definitely want to make use of whenever the opportunity grants me. And now for my traps. It's a very small trap lineup in this case. The reason why I run Foolish Burial Goods in this deck is because of PSY-Frame Overload, right here. And I'm running it for its secondary effect. So what it does is that, except for the turn that this card is sent to the graveyard, I can banish this from my graveyard and I can add 1 PSY-Frame card from my deck to my hand. In this case, I activate Foolish Burial Goods and then just dump Overload from my deck into my graveyard, and then on my opponent's turn, I can banish this from my graveyard and add pretty much any PSY-Framegear, in this case, add any PSY-Framegear monster from my deck to my hand. So that way, I'm prepared for pretty much anything that my opponent throws at me. If my opponent tries to do anything funny, then I'll be ready. And it also has a first effect, and I'm going to read it to you right now. It says, once per turn, you can banish 1 PSY-Frame monster from your hand or face up from your side of the field. Then target 1 card on the field, banish to face down. So it's kind of like Eater of Millions. So yeah, you'll definitely want to run 3 copies of that. The other traps that I run in this deck are 1 Metaverse. Of course, you can replace this with a 3rd copy of Terraforming if you want, but I just like being able to take my opponent by surprise by activating Metaverse on his or her turn, and then I can just activate PSY-Frame Circuit, so that way, if my opponent tries to play, then I can special summon my Framegears and then just go on with my synchro summons. And the last 2 traps that I run is 2 copies of Solemn Strike. I would have replaced one of them with the Solemn Warning, but I'm going to have to get to that eventually. So that's my entire PSY-Frame main deck. Of course, you guys can adjust this to any way that you'd like, but in the meantime, I'm going to go into my extra deck. So now here is my extra deck. This is an all synchro monster extra deck, so bear with me here. Before I get to my extra deck, I'm going to read off the effects of PSY-Framelord Omega as well as PSY-Framelord Zeta. So PSY-Framelord Omega is a level 8 synchro monster, so depending on what PSY-Framegears you have out on the field, that you can synchro summon to Omega. Same goes for Zeta. So what Omega does is that you can banish itself from the field, and you can also banish 1 random card from your opponent's hand until your next standby phase. It also has some other effects. It says here, once per turn during your opponent's standby phase, you can target one banished card, return it to the graveyard. If this card is in your graveyard, you can target one other card in the graveyard, shuffle both that card and this card from the graveyard into the deck. So yeah, it's a very neat synchro monster. That's why a lot of people love it. And the other synchro monster that I have here is PSY-Framelord Zeta. I'm not going to read that right now. It's a level 7 synchro monster unlike Omega. So it says here, once per turn during either player's turn, you can target one special summon monster your opponent controls in face-up attack position, banish both that monster and this card from the field, but return them in your next standby phase. If this card is in your graveyard, you can target one other PSY-Frame card in your graveyard, return this card to the extra deck, and if you do, add that target to your hand. So yeah, not only are these cards useful for just repelling your opponent's cards and preventing them from pretty much using anything, but it's also useful for recycling your used resources. So yeah, that's why I run 2 copies of Omega along with 3 copies of Zeta. In addition to that, the other synchro monsters I run are 1 Stardust Dragon, along with 1 Black Rose Dragon. Stardust Dragon negates effects that would destroy a card on the field, and Black Rose Dragon is good for just wiping the entire board, including itself, so that way you can start with a clean slate. You can expect these cards to be standard in pretty much any PSY-Frame deck, or any deck that uses PSY-Frames. And the reason why these are standard in the PSY-Frame extra deck is because these are able to just clear themselves from the board, so you can continue responding to your opponent's plays using your PSY-Framegears. At this point, you can include any other synchro monsters that you want into your own extra deck. But in the meantime, these are the monsters that I run in the rest of my extra deck. So, I run 1 Thought Ruler Archfiend. When this card destroys a monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, gain life points equal to that monster's original attack. And you can also use this use the second effect to negate the activation of a spell or trap that targets one psychic type monster on the field, and you can destroy that card. So yeah, I also run Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend, just like I said in that Soul Charge play that I mentioned earlier in this deck profile. You can destroy as many special summon monsters on the field as possible, and then inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent for each monster destroyed this way. I also run Stardust Spark Dragon. It says here, once per turn during either player's turn, you can target 1 face-up card you control. During this turn, you cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. Black Rose Moonlight Dragon, is good for bouncing your opponent's monsters back into their hand or into their extra deck. I also run Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon. This is here mainly because you can prevent your opponent from activating any cards, I think. Oh, monsters in your opponent's possession cannot activate their effects during the battle phase. I also have 1 Michael the Archlight Sworn. It's good for spot removal. 1 Ancient Secret Wyvern. I don't know why people don't run this card more often. It's good for potential OTKs. And finally, I run 1 Clear Wing Synchro Dragon. Of course, this is only 14 extra deck monsters, but you guys can include a 15th extra deck monster. That choice for the 15th extra deck monster is all yours. But if you ask me, I would have included a Psychic Life Trancer. That's another way of gaining life points, basically. So that's it for my first ever PSY-Frame deck profile, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. If you guys have any suggestions on what I should do to improve this deck, then be sure to let me know down in the comments below. And you can also hit me up on Twitter and Instagram at Mage of Ancients and let me know about your suggestions. Also, if you guys enjoyed this video and you want to help support the channel, then be sure to hit that like button. Comment below what other Yu-Gi-Oh videos you guys would like to see. I do deck profiles, weekly vlogs and unboxings, and pack openings as well. And of course, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll be the first to know and when I upload brand new Yu-Gi-Oh videos. All your support to this channel means a lot to me, so I want to thank you all in advance. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and I'll see you next time.